Captain Marcus Hale stood alone on the observation deck of the UNS Resolute, watching the void stretch endlessly beyond reinforced glass. Space didn't look like anything romantic out here. No beauty, no poetry, just depth, an endless pressure that made even light feel swallowed. Behind him, the ship lived and breathed in controlled silence. Soft hums of reactors, occasional mechanical clicks, the distant, disciplined movement of a crew trained not to panic even when the universe gave them reason to. But tonight, even discipline felt thin, because silence had a weight to it now, and that weight had been building for 3 weeks. The first detection had come from the outer relay network, a cluster of unidentified objects moving against known gravitational patterns. No emissions, no drive signatures that matched any human or allied technology, just mass, enormous, deliberate, and coordinated. At first, Command assumed a sensor glitch. Then the objects adjusted formation. That was the moment everyone stopped calling it a glitch. Now the fleet had a name for them, even if unofficially whispered through channels that weren't meant for Faye. The drifters. Not because they drifted, because they moved like they owned the direction they were heading. Hale's reflection in the glass looked older than it should have. 38 years old, but carrying the expression of a man who had already rehearsed too many worst-case scenarios and still hadn't found the real one. Still no signal, he asked without turning. Lieutenant Grant stood a few meters behind him, tablet in hand, posture rigid in the way only fresh tension produces. "No, sir," Grant replied. "No comms, no active scans, no heat bursts. It's like they're not trying to hide. It's like they don't care if we see them." Hale finally turned. "That's Weiss," he said quietly. Grant hesitated. "Worse than stealth." "Stealth means fear," Hale replied. "This means confidence." A pause settled between them. The ship's internal lighting flickered subtly as power rerouted through long-range arrays. Somewhere deep in engineering, systems were being pushed past peacetime limits. Every vessel in the sector was doing the same thing. Quietly, efficiently, unspoken, because no one wanted to be the first to say it out loud. But Hale had already said it in his own mind. This wasn't a diplomatic encounter. It was a measurement. The UNS Resolute shuddered almost imperceptibly as its forward sensor suite locked onto the incoming formation. On the holographic display behind them, points of light resolved into structure. Not ships in the human sense. Not sleek hulls or engineered symmetry. These were lead constructs. Vast, uneven masses of shifting geometry, like someone had built machines without ever agreeing on what machine meant. Some sections rotated slowly. Others remained still, as if frozen mid-thought. Dark corridors of unknown function cut through glowing lattice cores. And yet they moved as one organism. Grant swallowed. "They're not broadcasting anything." Hale nodded slowly. "They don't think they need to." That was the part that unsettled him most. Every known intelligent species, humanity included, broadcasted presence. Even when trying to hide, even when cautious, there was always leakage. Energy, communication, curiosity. But this fleet gave nothing away. No curiosity, no hesitation, no acknowledgement. It was as if the human fleet, the entire Sol defense perimeter, didn't register as a pay, only as terrain. A soft chime echoed through the deck. Dr. Ilara Venn entered without announcement, tablet already active in her hands. She didn't waste time with greetings. That alone told Hale everything about her read of the situation. "We've finished cross-referencing the passive data from their leading formation," she said. "And?" Hale asked. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. That hesitation mattered more than words. "They are not scanning us," she said finally. "They already classified us." Grant frowned. "Classified us as what?" Ilara's eyes didn't leave the display. Biological baseline structure. Low resistance. Predictable response curves. Hale's jaw tightened. "That sounds like military language." "It is," she said, "but not ours." The deck seemed colder now, though nothing had changed in temperature. Grant took a step closer to the display. "You're saying they've done this before?" "I'm saying," Ilara replied carefully, "they are behaving like something that already knows the outcome of first contact." A beat of silence. Then Hale asked the question no one wanted to ask. "What are we to them?" Ilara finally looked up, and her voice, when it came, was quieter than before. "Prey class designation." For a moment, no one spoke. Even the ship seemed to pause, systems still functioning, but everything else holding its breath. Far beyond the observation deck, through layers of vacuum and distance, the alien fleet shifted. Not aggressively, not hurriedly, just slightly, like something had decided the waiting phase was over, and the hunt was about to begin. The moment it happened, there was no dramatic warning, no countdown, no final diplomatic attempt, no last-second hesitation that might have softened what came next. Just silence. Then, a pulse. Across deep space, the alien formation released something that didn't behave like a signal in any human sense. It wasn't light, radio, or particle transmission. It was more like reality itself briefly twitched in a pattern that carried intent. On the UNS Resolute, every display flickered white. Then every system attempting to interpret incoming data froze. Captain Marcus Hale gripped the railing instinctively as the deck lights dimmed for half a second, as if the ship itself had flinched. "Report," he snapped. Lieutenant Grant was already struggling with his console. Incoming burst across all bands. "Sir, wait. No, it's not bands. It's everywhere." Dr. Ilara Venn stepped forward immediately. "Isolate the pattern. Strip it from carrier noise." "I'm trying," Grant said, voice tightening. "But it's not embedded in a carrier. It's like it is the carrier." That was when the satellites died. On the tactical display, 3 human orbital relay stations blinked out of existence in perfect sequence. No debris field. No fragmentation trails. Just disappearance, like someone had erased them from a map rather than destroyed them. Hale's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes hardened. "How?" he asked. Ilara didn't answer immediately. She was staring at the decoded fragments coming through the ship's auxiliary filters. Lines of shifting geometry. Repeating structures. Non-random but not human-readable. Then she spoke, carefully. "It's not a message," she said. Grant looked up sharply. "Then what is it?" Her throat moved as she swallowed. "A classification output." The word landed heavier than any explosion. The main display stabilized at last. And there it was. A symbol. Not drawn, not written, but projected into perception in a way that bypassed normal linguistic translation. It rearranged itself depending on who observed it, but always converged into the same idea. A single concept rendered in impossible geometry. "Submit." The bridge went silent. Not because systems failed, because everyone understood it. Or at least, something in them did. Hale stepped closer to the display. "Is that all?" Ilara shook her head slowly. "There's metadata embedded in it. Layers beneath the surface pattern." "Meaning?" She hesitated again, then answered. "It's not a demand. It's a label. A final designation." Grant's voice dropped. "Designation of what?" Ilara looked at him this time. "Pray." For a moment, even the ship's mechanical hum felt too loud. Hale exhaled slowly through his nose, controlling something that wanted to become anger. They didn't open communication channels. "No," Ilara confirmed, "because they don't believe negotiation is required." Grant frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Any intelligent species would at least test for diplomacy." Ilara turned slightly toward him. "Only if they believe the other side is worth negotiating with." That sentence hit harder than the satellite destruction. On the tactical map, the alien formation shifted again. Not toward Earth. Not away. Just repositioning, like a predator adjusting footing before a strike. Hale watched it carefully. "How many ships?" he asked. 37 confirmed large constructs," Grant replied. "Smaller units embedded within formations. Unknown count. And they are still not broadcasting anything else." "Nothing," Grant said. Ilara's fingers moved rapidly across her interface, pulling deeper analysis layers. "There's something else." Hale turned slightly. "Explain." She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. "The pulse that hit us, it didn't just transmit information. It mapped response latency." Grant blinked. "That's not possible." "It is," she said, "if you already know how a system reacts." A new silence formed. Not confusion this time. Concern. Hale spoke slowly. "You're saying they are predicting us?" Ilara nodded once. "Not predicting. Preloading expectation models. Like they've run simulations of civilizations like ours before." Grant shook his head. "That would require prior contact." Ilara didn't answer directly. But she didn't deny it either. On the main screen, the alien glyph stabilized again. The same structure. The same meaning. Submit. Only now, it pulsed slightly, like repetition was not instruction, but confirmation. Hale stepped back from the display. His voice lowered. Lieutenant Grant. Yes, say. Status of fleet readiness. Grant hesitated for half a second. All forward defense systems armed. Missile arrays online. Electronic warfare suites primed. We ready, say. Hale nodded once, then looked back at the drifting alien mass beyond the hull. They think we're predictable, he said quietly. Ilara didn't respond, because she wasn't sure that assumption was wrong. The alien formation began to move again. This time, forward. Not rushing. Not attacking. Just closing distance with the same calm inevitability as something that already believed the outcome had been decided. And somewhere deep inside every human ship across the system, something very old, very primitive, and very human began to wake up. Not fear. Not panic. Something worse for the universe ahead. Recognition that the hunt had officially begun, and prey did not always stay where it was placed. The first strike was not supposed to be the first strike. At least, not in the human plan. It was meant to be a warning demonstration, controlled force, calibrated response, a reminder that Earth's defense fleet was not an unarmed observer waiting politely for classification. But plans had a way of collapsing the moment the universe stopped behaving like theory. On the UNS Resolute, Captain Marcus Hale watched the alien formation drift closer. No acceleration spikes. No evasive maneuvers. Just steady approach, like gravity itself had decided direction. Lieutenant Grant's voice cut through the bridge tension. Enemy vessels within engagement envelope in 90 seconds. Dr. Ilara Venn didn't look away from her data stream. They still haven't altered their formation. Hale frowned slightly. That's confidence. It's something, Weiss, Ilara said quietly. It's assumption. Grant glanced at her. Assumption of what? Ilara didn't answer immediately, because the answer felt too simple, too insulting. That nothing here can meaningfully hurt them, she said at last. A silence followed, sharp, focused, heavy. Hale exhaled. Launch readiness. Grant nodded once. Missile stacks are green. Railguns charged. All fleet coordination nodes synced. Hale looked forward, toward the alien mass. Then we stopped being a hypothesis, he said, and humanity fired. The first wave wasn't a single weapon. It was a laid doctrine. Dozens of kinetic missiles launched from hidden human positions, some from orbiting platforms, others from cloaked asteroid installations that had been silent for years. They accelerated not in straight lines, but in adaptive arcs, constantly adjusting to predicted evasions. Behind them came electromagnetic disruption bursts, attempting to blind targeting systems. Behind those, railgun slugs fired from synchronized platforms at velocities that turned distance into irrelevance. It was beautiful, in a cold, mathematical way, and it was designed to end fights before they could become wars. For a fraction of a second after launch, everything held its breath. Then impact. The leading alien construct did not dodge. It did not even acknowledge the incoming wave until the last possible moment. Instead, its outer lattice structure shifted, subtle rearrangement of geometry that only became visible when human senses struggled to interpret what they were seeing. Ilara's eyes widened. Their surface isn't armor. It's adaptive topology. Grant blinked. Meaning? It changes what impact means, she said. The missile struck, and for the first time since detection, the alien formation reacted. Not with destruction of the missiles, with reinterpretation of them. The incoming kinetic warheads didn't explode in the traditional sense. They slowed, just slightly at first, then drastically, as if entering a medium that refused to acknowledge their momentum as valid. Some detonated prematurely. Others simply stalled in mid-space before collapsing into inert debris. The railgun slugs fared no better. Their trajectories bent, not through deflection, but through gradual redefinition of direction, as though space itself had been persuaded to disagree with their intended path. On the bridge, Grant stared at the display. That's not shielding. Ilara's voice was tight. It's not technology in our sense. Hale watched carefully. Then what is it? She hesitated, then said the word no one wanted to hear in a tactical briefing. Control. A second wave launched anyway. Human doctrine didn't allow hesitation after first contact. This time, they escalated. Thermal saturation payloads, gravitic disruption charges, EMP lattice nets designed to collapse electronic coherence across entire volumes of space. The alien formation finally shifted, but not in retreat. In response modeling, the closest construct split into segments, not to avoid damage, but to distribute it across multiple internal states. Energy meant to destroy instead got absorbed into structural reconfiguration processes that immediately began compensating. For a brief moment, it looked like the human attack was succeeding. Then Ilara whispered, "They adapting." Grant snapped his head toward her. "That's impossible in real-time combat conditions." "It shouldn't be possible," she corrected. But it was happening. The alien fleet wasn't merely surviving. It was learning. Each failed strike refined their structure. Each impact updated their response logic. Each attempted kill became input data. And worse, they were doing it faster than humanity could escalate. On the alien side of the engagement zone, the formation paused again. This time, it wasn't stillness. It was evaluation. Hale noticed it immediately. "They've stopped advancing." Grant frowned. "We forced them back." Ilara shook her head slowly. "No." Her voice dropped. "They're recalculating us." As if to confirm her words, the alien formation restructured. Not defensive, not evasive, analytical. Entire sections of the fleet shifted position to form layered observation lattices, focusing on human firing zones. Others expanded outward, not to attack, but to map origin points of the missile barrage. Hale's expression tightened. "They're identifying our infrastructure." Ilara nodded. "And adjusting priorities." Grant swallowed. "Priorities for what?" Ilara didn't answer immediately, but the answer came anyway, because the alien fleet began to move again. And this time, it was not slow. It was decisive. Not toward Earth directly, toward every known human defensive node simultaneously. Hale's voice lowered. "They didn't think we were harmless." A pause. "They thought we were irrelevant." The bridge lights flickered faintly as the fleet prepared for the next exchange. And for the first time since contact began, humanity realized something unsettling. They had not drawn the attention of hunters. They had drawn the attention of something that had already finished hunting before it arrived. The battlefield stopped feeling like a battlefield. It became something closer to a shifting equation, one where every human move was instantly absorbed, analyzed, and answered before the consequences could fully register. On the UNS Resolute, the bridge no longer had the energy of anticipation that had burned out somewhere between the first failed strike and the third adaptive alien response cycle. Now there was only focus, and a growing, uncomfortable awareness that focus alone might not be enough. Lieutenant Grant stared at the tactical display. "We're losing outer nodes. 2 orbital defense platforms gone in under 10 seconds. "Debris?" Hale asked. Grant shook his head. "No debris signature. It's like they are just unmade." Dr. Ilara Venn leaned over her console, eyes scanning rapidly. "They're not targeting structures randomly. They're following our response map." Hale turned slightly. "Explain." Ilara hesitated, then tapped the display. A layered hologram expanded. Human fleet positions, missile launch vectors, relay hubs, and fallback coordination points. "They've built a live model of our command architecture," she said. "Every time we respond, we reveal hierarchy. They're exploiting it." Grant frowned. "So stop responding." Ilara shook her head immediately. "That's wise." Hale's voice was steady, but lower now. "Why?" "Because then they assume collapse of coordination," she said, "and switch to systemic eradication." A silence settled again. This time, it wasn't uncertainty. It was realization of scale. Somewhere beyond the Resolute's hull, the alien fleet continued its advance, but something had changed in its rhythm. It was no longer effortless. It was no longer dismissive. It was careful. Hale noticed it first in the timing gaps. "They are pausing between engagements," he said. Grant looked up. "That's good, right? Slowing down." "No," Ilara said immediately. Her eyes were locked on a cascading data feed. "That's hesitation." Grant blinked. Why would they hesitate? They are winning. Ilara didn't answer immediately, because the answer didn't fit easily into human expectations. "They're recalibrating damage tolerance," she said slowly. They didn't expect resistance density at this scale. Hale turned toward her, meaning we're hurting them. A pause. Then Alara nodded once. Yes, she said, but not in a way they understand yet. On the tactical map, something subtle shifted. A segment of the alien formation broke alignment, not in retreat, but in restructuring defensive geometry. Energy fields reoriented. Previously confident forward units pulled back slightly behind laid lattice structures. Grant leaned closer. They are pulling units back. Ilara's voice softened. They are protecting core nodes. Hale narrowed his eyes. So we've actually damaged something important. Ilara hesitated again, then said it. We've made them cautious. The word hung in the air like an anomaly, because nothing about the first contact had suggested caution was part of their doctrine. Until now, a new wave of human counterfire launched, smaller, more precise, targeted strikes aimed at exploiting the newly identified hesitation windows. And for the first time, alien responses weren't instant. One missile cluster penetrated deeper than before, striking a mid-formation node. The explosion was visible even across sensor distortion layers, an expanding bloom of energy and fragmented structure. Grant's eyes widened. That one got through. Ilara was already analyzing the aftermath. They are isolating damaged zones instead of immediately compensating. Hale watched closely. That's adaptation. No, Ilara said quietly. This is something else. Another impact struck an adjacent segment of the alien fleet. This time, the response lagged by nearly 3 seconds. In combat terms, it was an eternity. On the bridge, that delay felt louder than any explosion. Grant's voice lowered. They're slowing down. Ilara nodded slowly. For the first time, she said, they are not certain of the outcome. Hale exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the shifting alien formation. An uncertainty leads to what? He asked. Ilara didn't hesitate this time. Error. As if reacting to the concept itself, the alien fleet adjusted again, but the adjustment was no longer seamless. There were micro-disruptions in coordination, small misalignments in geometry, slight delays in synchronized movement. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The hunters were no longer perfect. Grant stared at the display. We did that. Ilara shook her head slightly. No, she said. We just proved they can be interrupted. A new alert flashed across the tactical grid. Multiple alien segments began repositioning toward previously secondary zones, outer defensive perimeters, fallback support clusters, structural stabilization nodes. Hale's expression tightened. They are shifting priorities. Ilara confirmed it immediately. They are protecting internal systems. Grant frowned. Internal systems for what? Ilara looked at the screen for a long moment, then answered softly. Continuity. A heavy silence followed, because continuity implied survival strategies, and survival strategies implied something humanity had not considered until now. These beings were not invincible. They were not inevitable. They were just more experienced at winning. The alien fleet tightened formation again, but the confidence was gone from its motion. What remained was something more careful, more calculated, and for the first time since contact began, it was reacting like something that understood it could lose. Hale stepped forward slightly, voice controlled but firm. They're afraid of losing control. Ilara met his gaze. Yes, she said. A pause. But now they know they can. Outside the hull, the alien fleet continued its advance, but no longer like a certainty. Now like a question that had just been answered incorrectly for the first time in its existence. The edge of the Sol system was never meant to feel like a last stand. It was supposed to be quiet, monitoring stations, long-range telescopes, automated defense buoys drifting in disciplined silence. A boundary between the familiar and the unknown. Now it felt like a threshold. On one side, humanity, stretched across dozens of ships, platforms, and scattered defensive nets. On the other, the alien fleet, no longer moving with the certainty it had carried at first contact. Between them, nothing but distance and a growing awareness that both sides had changed. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the UNS Resolute bridge, watching the tactical display stabilize into a tense equilibrium. The alien formation had stopped its aggressive forward compression. Human counterfire had also paused, not from exhaustion, but from recognition that escalation alone was no longer decisive. Lieutenant Grant broke the silence first. All sectors reporting stalemate conditions. Neither side advancing. Dr. Ilara Venn didn't look relieved. If anything, she looked more focused than before. "It's not a stalemate," she said. Hale glanced at her. "Explain." Her fingers moved quickly across her console. The displays zoomed in on the alien command vessel, larger than anything else in the formation, surrounded by layered protective geometry that now pulsed irregularly. "They've shifted from engagement behavior to inquiry behavior," she said. Grant frowned. "Inquiry?" Ilara nodded. "They are trying to understand what we are." A pause settled across the bridge. Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. "They didn't try before." "They thought they already knew," Ilara said. "Everything about their initial actions suggests pre-categorization. We were assigned a classification before contact even occurred." Grant leaned forward. "Pre-categorized as prey." Ilara didn't correct him. That silence was answer enough. Outside, the alien fleet emitted something new. Not a weapon pulse. Not a disruption field. A structured transmission pattern. Far more stable than the earlier classification burst. It moved through human senses with less violence, more precision. Translation systems on the Resolute struggled for a moment, then stabilized. On the main display, symbols began forming. Not commands. Not labels. Questions. Ilara's voice tightened. "They're asking for definition parameters." Grant blinked. "That's language." "It's structured intent mapping," she said. "They're trying to map what we are based on self-description instead of preloaded models." Hale stepped closer. "And what do we tell them?" Ilara hesitated. Because for the first time since contact began, the answer wasn't tactical. It was identity. Before she could respond, another signal arrived, this one clearer, more direct. The alien command vessel had isolated a focused transmission beam aimed at the Resolute. A single query stabilized on the screen. "What are you?" Silence filled the bridge. Grant looked at Hale. "That's it. That's their message." Ilara studied it carefully. "It's not curiosity in the human sense. It's verification." Hale nodded slowly. "They want confirmation of classification failure." Ilara met his gaze. "Or correction." The alien fleet held position. No movement. No aggression. Just observation. Waiting. Hale stepped forward. "All ships in range are holding," Grant reported quietly. "They're waiting on us, say." Hale didn't respond immediately, because every instinct of command training told him this was either negotiation or deception. But neither explanation fully fit what had already happened. Finally, he spoke. "Open transmission." Grant hesitated. "Say, open it," Hale repeated. A channel established. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as human and alien systems interfaced at a controlled level. On the display, the alien question remained, steady and unchanging. "What are you?" Hale stepped closer to the microphone interface and answered, "We're the ones who don't stay classified." A pause. The alien fleet shifted slightly, not in attack posture, but in re-evaluation. Ilara's eyes widened slightly. "They are processing semantic contradiction." Grant whispered, "Did that work?" Ilara didn't answer, because something else was happening now. The alien command vessel expanded its transmission field. Not across Sol alone, but outward, beyond sensor range. A broader signal, as if broadcasting the answer attempt to something larger. Hale noticed it too. "They're reporting upward." Ilara frowned. "Not upward. Outward." Grant blinked. "Outward to what?" Ilara's voice dropped. "To whoever taught them what prey is." A heavy silence followed that statement, because it reframed everything. This was not first contact. It was inspection. A system testing whether a new variable fit into an existing hierarchy. Hale stayed at the alien fleet. "They didn't come here to conquer," he said slowly. Ilara shook her head. "No, they came to verify." Grant looked between them. "Verify what?" Ilara answered softly. "Whether humanity breaks their model." Outside, the alien formation began to withdraw, not in defeat, not in panic, but in structured retreat. Layer by layer, segments disengaged and reformed into departure vectors. The command vessel remained for a moment longer, then sent one final transmission. Ilara translated it as it arrived. A single line. "Then you were never prey." And just like that, the fleet vanished from Sol space. No explosion. No warning. No final battle. Just absence. On the bridge of the UNS Resolute, silence returned, but it was no longer the same silence that had preceded the encounter. Hale exhaled slowly. Grant finally spoke. Did we win? Ilara stared at the empty display where the fleet had been. No, she said quietly. A pause. We were never fighting for survival. Hale turned slightly. Then what were we fighting for? Ilara met his gaze. To be recognized as something that cannot be safely categorized. Outside the ship, Earth remained intact, but the universe beyond it had just learned something it had not accounted for. Humanity did not behave like prey, and whatever had been watching the stars was no longer certain what to call them at all.